might be more going on than what you think.
And now for the uninformed.
So let's serve up some dibbles and bits.
Here's the biggest informer of them all.
Isn't that what you said?
No.
On the Rob Dibble Show.
Well, dibbles and bits, first dibs question of the day.
It's all
They're
the
all
same.
good.
It's all
They're
the
all
same.
the same.
Well, I had a first dibs question for you, but I got some bits as well. But let me give you the first
We can
dibs
merge
question.
this. We got
Okay.
15 minutes.
So we lost last night. UConn men's basketball, that is.
Is that the bit?
No, this is the
First
dibs.
question. I'm just messing with your brain.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a bit to anybody. Everybody should have that as headline news when you go to work today. The question is, should they lose their number one ranking, Dibs? Let me set this up. Purdue was number 2.
It dropped to 3.
They lost to Ohio State, who had an interim head coach. Now it was at Ohio State. 2, I do believe, is Houston.
They're 22-3.
Yeah.
We're going to be 24-3.
Now a lot of their losses or their losses are in the Big 12 and it's conference play as well. But I do think they have a home loss, if I'm not mistaken, unlike the UConn Huskies. Now, the UConn Huskies did lose to Seton Hall. I understand that. But still, the drubbing of a number 4 by 20 points at home and then turn around and lose to number 15 Creighton. Creighton's not chopped liver here. Number 15 Creighton with 3 potential NBA players on that Creighton team. I think they're still number 1, man. I don't think they should drop.
I'm not big on polls, but we should have been number 1 coming out of the offseason, and we weren't. A lot of people doubted us. I still think we're the best team in the country, but we got beat. And if you drop out of number 1, you drop out of number 1, you got to go get it back. And I think that you got another game with Marquette coming up. You got Villanova you can swamp on the weekend. Not going to be easy, but I'm not really worried about it. I don't think they are either, but I think that's why sports are so humbling. That, like you said, Purdue could get beat by an interim coach. And listen, those kids don't know. They don't care who the coach is.
Yeah.
They just know they're facing Purdue. I give Creighton credit where credit is due. They made 14 threes. They shot 50% from 3. They kicked their ass. And, that should smart for something. So maybe they deserve to stay at number 1. Maybe they don't. But as far as I'm concerned, you got to be on to the next game. Where you are in the standings isn't going to help you win the Big East. Where you are in the standings didn't help anybody win a national championship last year. We took that prize, so you've got to play great down the stretch here, and hopefully they win out the rest of the regular season and get right into March Madness and go crazy.
I think it was like a couple of years ago when Gonzaga loses in the championship game. Was that Nova? Who was that? I forget who wins that, but they
probably Villanova.
I think that was the last number 1 overall. But usually, your number 1 overall seed in the tournament doesn't end up winning the national championship.
But they're pretty close. It's usually like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 through 1, 2, 3, 6.
But you're
going
to have
very
4
rare,
number 1s,
right?
And that main number 1 will get the easiest road, so they say. I don't think there is an easy road when it comes to the NCAAs. I mean, you're going to have to beat some of the hottest teams, some of the most talented teams, no matter who you're facing.
Honestly, every game should be approached like it's a national championship for the rest of the year for UConn, because that's how every other team is going to approach it. They, watching Creighton, they came out, every shot they made was huge, because it is. And if you're on the other side of that, if you're UConn and you don't go back and watch that film and be embarrassed a little bit, then you're not human. Because every human's got to take that in and be like, we've got to be better prepared for what's going to face us against Villanova, what's going to face us against every regular season game the rest of the season, what's going to happen when we get to the – you could be playing the 16th seed if you're number 1 seed, and they could still come at you from every angle. That's the equalizer. It's called the three-point line. And when teams are sinking 3 points on you and you don't defend it better – things like last night can happen to any team, and that's what happened to Purdue. Purdue took Ohio State lightly. Ohio State came out and played their brains out. And I've watched a lot of these other takedowns, and it's the same thing. It's that you're having an off night for your talent level, and the other team is just perfect. And that's literally, teams have to play perfectly against us to beat us. and we know that. But I also, I'm a big believer in you start believing your own hype. And they're hyping all these games up, and they continue to talk about, is this team better than last year's national championship team? That's garbage to me.
That's my fault.
That's garbage to me.
A little my fault.
Because you haven't won a championship. You need, those guys are gone. Andre Jackson just came to a practice or a game the other day. Sanogo's fighting for his NBA life. That's a whole nother can of worms that's behind you. These guys have to write their own history, and they have to play great every game the rest of the way.
Morphing into some dibbles and bits, I got some Travelers news for everyone. Scotty Scheffler has made the commitment.
He's going to shuffle on down here?
He's going to shuffle back to Cromwell, and he's going to be a part of the Travelers Championship in 2024. I expect every PGA player, honestly, to be at the Travelers Championship with the purse, with the FedEx points, with the heightened elevation of the tournament in the last couple of years, and with what Andy Bissett and Nathan Grube do for these guys. I'm expecting a full lineup, and Scotty Scheffler is just a good announcement. I think there's more and more to come. On that note, I hope our friends Nathan Grube and Andy Bissett, I almost flipped their names around, I hope they're listening, because I have been on them about this particular guy that I want at the Travelers Championship. Maybe we have an exemption we can float this guy's way, or maybe I should say kid. 15-year-old Charlie Woods is going to be playing in a qualifier coming up tomorrow. I have been on the Groupster to get Charlie Woods an exemption. He's like, we'll wait till we'll see what the dad says about that. Well, some other tournament's trying to beat us to the punch. We got to get this kid in the field because he is going to be must-see golf out there in Cromwell.
Well, and they're also in that field is Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Matt Fitzpatrick, Justin Rose, and Gary Woodland. Yeah, it would be cool to watch this kid make it. What a beautiful swing. Yeah. What a competitor. And I agree with you. If there's a kid that deserves an exemption to possibly get his dad to want to play in it, the Travelers would be there. First of all, you get a purse of $20 million, and I agree with you. Why wouldn't every PGA pro want to be doing that? So, but yeah, Charlie is definitely someone that everybody wants to watch and follow, because if you had a chance when Tiger was 15 to know everything about him and what he was going to do at Stanford and then win 15 majors and over 100 events, I think you'd probably retrace your step and go, I wish I would have watched him when he was 15. So that's definitely something that I would invest in.
Chris Carey, a guy that I hate saying this name because I love this man, and I had a chance to hire him in the Hartford market, and I did not, and I love his grandfather dearly. I tried to form my broadcasting style off his grandfather. Harry Carey's grandson, Chris Carey, just got the job in Oakland, and he will be a part of that staff. We were talking to Dallas Braden about this last week. I'm super excited for him. He is a really great broadcaster. He's been around the Northeast doing a lot of college basketball as well. That's how he came across my radar. Got to talk with this guy. I think he is perfect for this job. The Oakland A's, let's just face it, they know that this is going to be a dumpster fire season. And they're, like Dallas said, there's a lot of guys with some opportunities out there. And Chris Carey's one of them. Harry Carey's grandson getting the job as the Oakland A's play-by-play.
Well, you're going to want to listen to more of the broadcasting than watch the game. So
that's the way it comes to me.
Anytime we can make headlines with some of these hirings. Listen, the guy's good at what he does. He is certainly someone that's going to open a lot of ears to what's going on in these games, and it's going to be a hard watch. This team's going to lose over 100 games this year. You're going to be running out AAA and AA players to try to fill a major league roster. You're not going to have a lot of guys that you're going to want to show up at these games for wherever they do play. And so it's a good hire. It's a brand name. The Carey family name is just like the Buck family name. And, they have a great lineage. So, obviously the Oakland A's are right now in transition. And what they're transitioning to is in 2028, what kind of team are you going to have? What kind of fan base are you going to have? Are you going to be almost starting brand new with the Vegas A's. I mean, that's so the broadcasters right now are lining up to take these jobs, and Carey's one of the latest to get an opportunity, and so congratulations.
I do see orthopedic Jeff Olson walking around. We'll talk to him next segment. Before we get to that, I have to test out a game with you. Now, we tested this out yesterday with Kurt. Bobby V's is hooking us up with a bunch of gift cards to their restaurant/sports bar/megaplex. That's what I call it, of sports. One of the best places to go watch a game, any game. They've got it on so many TVs, but their menu's outstanding. Home of the wrap. That's where the wrap was invented, Dibs. You know that.
Bobby V was in the kitchen doing it back in the 80s.
So Bobby V's is hooking up with us just like they did last year for the Big East Challenge. We'll get that started in a couple of weeks. They'll also be a part of the second chance bracket we're doing around the Sensational 16. I'm getting my copyright down for the March Mayhem. But on top of that, they're just giving us a bunch of gift cards, and I can't find anywhere to put it, but I got to give it to the listeners. So what I want to do, starting tomorrow's show, is a little game called Sports Math. Now, Kurt I think you went 1 for 3, but really will give you a 1.5 for 3. He was 50% yesterday. He failed. He totally failed. But it was a new game, and it was a tough game, and it's math. So let's see if you
couldn't
can
pick
do
a
this.
worse game.
Now, I'll give you the jersey number. Do you know Caitlin Clark's jersey number, by the way?
I do not.
It's 22. Now, if I said to you, Caitlin Clark plus Michael Jordan, what would be the answer?
45.
All right. Ding, ding, ding. Now, then when I was writing that question down, I was thinking, Kurt, he was also number 45 at one point.
He was.
So if somebody came up with 67, I think I'd have to give them a ding as well, right?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
So we just got to avoid those kind of
because
questions.
Kobe wore 24 and 8.
Okay.
And, what do you know Kobe Bryant as more?
24 for me, yeah.
So
okay, we'll try to stick away from those kind of double entendres, I guess, that we get in the world of sports. Let's try this one. Caitlin Clark plus holes on a golf course.
40?
Give him a ding on that one. 2 for 2. Now, you also have 9-hole courses, and I worked at a course that had 27 one time, so somebody could be cheeky and be like, oh, what about the
Well, I think Tunx's Plantation has 2 full 18s and an extra 9.
54 holes,
yeah.
So what are you going to do now? So, all right, we got to watch out for that as well. There's always these people in the woodwork, especially our listening audience. Let's try this one then.
How about Caitlin Clark and Bobby Orr? 26.
Give him a ding on that one. All right, this was the last one. Let's see if this works. No, I got 2 more. Caitlin Clark times UConn men's basketball's ranking.
22.
All right. Didn't get fooled with the trick question. Number 1 rank. Yeah, give him a round of applause. All right, here's one that I don't think's got any problems with it. Steph Castle plus Paige Beckers.
Oh, my God. I don't even know what Paige Becker's number is.
Whoa!
Castle's 5.
Wow, that's the hard one, I think.
That's not. Is she 8? 13? No.
She is also 5, Dibs. That would be a 10 spot there.
Yeah, I'm not a big numbers guy when it comes to college sports.
I'm not a big numbers guy. Can we clip?
Can we get Dr. Olson on and stop this nonsense?
All right, let's
Dr.
take
Olson,
a break. Dr. Olson, get ready.
You want to take a break?
Or you want to keep going?
Let's keep going.
All right, fine. We'll keep going. Let me switch him with these headsets. So go ahead. Introduce him while I'm switching this up.
All right, Dr. Jeff Olson is joining us now, and he is a shoulder and elbow guy after my own heart because I've had both my shoulder operated on twice, my elbow once. And
he was nailing the sports math, by the way. Over
oh,
there
yeah.
in the
He's
lounge.
like, oh, these are some easy questions.
What's up, man?
Jeff, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Were you operating earlier?
I was.
All right, what did you do today?
I had 4 shoulder replacements. We did a total elbow replacement, one of my partners and myself, and then I removed the hardware off of an elbow as well. So
which is worse, the shoulder or the elbow?
Or
like more intricate for you?
I think they're I don't know, they're just very different operations, but from a recovery standpoint, I think a shoulder is probably a little bit harder. Total elbow patients tend to be more low demand, most commonly done for rheumatoid arthritis, unless somebody has a really bad fracture that they have it done for. But you kind of lay up in a splint for a long time, and then once things heal in, you start moving. So shoulder, you want people moving fairly quickly, and I think that because of that, people tend to be pretty sore.
You want to talk about your shoulders or my shoulders?
No,
first?
I don't want to talk about us, but I did want to talk about Shohei Ohtani and having 2 Tommy Johns in 5 years. And a lot of people have already talked about this. That you know, this after the second one, your percentages go down of making a full recovery and all that kind of stuff. So you're the expert here. First, is there something wrong with his mechanics that caused the second one? Or is it just the 400 at-bats? I was a lefty hitter and a righty thrower, so you're snapping that elbow when you're swinging. Does any of that stuff have anything to do with that second one and the wearing out and getting to Tommy John number 2?
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think the fact that he's come back and played at such a high level from just one, kind of beats the statistics. When you look at the studies, the return to not the return to play, but return to prior performance is not super high. The return to play may be, in the 80%, and the return to prior performance is probably lower than that. And so to come back and have a second one, or do well for some time and then have a second one, we'll see how he does. I mean, he's an excellent athlete, so, and he's got all the resources you could possibly need. So, but that's difficult. And I think to get to your point or to your question, I think there is, in the general athlete, you say, okay, maybe they have some core weakness, some trunk weakness, that there's something going on, a tight shoulder, whatever. But these guys are world-class athletes, and they're getting personal trainers and everything. So it's hard to know. You'd have to assume that everything else is in line, and then maybe it is just prior surgery, revision surgery, and there's other things that are at play that's not normally at play.
Where do you take the second ligament from?
Well, that's good. There's a couple different options. So, assuming they used his palmaris from the wrist forearm, you could go contralateral palmaris. You could go hamstrings. That's becoming common. And then you could use an allograft, though which is from a cadaver. But I doubt they're using that in someone.
What do you prefer?
I think if somebody has a palmaris, that works well. It's a redundant kind of muscle that's not really needed, and so you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. When you go for somebody's hamstrings, there's some thought that when they take it from the same side, the ipsilateral leg, that your push-off strength might be affected, though that's not entirely borne out. So there's some. So I think if they have it, now 15% of the population won't have it. And so you sometimes can't use it. So it's not there.
Have you ever opened somebody up and they didn't have it?
No, because it's pretty obvious.
Okay.
Right, so I have it, and I don't know if all you have to do is kind of make a fist right there. So it was used.
What am I looking for?
Just that tendon right here. So
I don't think I have one.
Right
dude.
here?
Yep.
Do I have? Is
Yeah,
is that what that is?
Yep.
Right
yep.
there?
You have it.
You
too.
have it.
I have one. I
Yeah.
have 2 of them.
So,
All right, I'm
so
good.
more people.
So you're up
Keep
for
mine.
Tommy John if you need
No.
it.
It was actually in chimps they use it because they swing from trees and it helps helps their stability when they're swinging. But in humans, it's not needed. So it inserts right on the palmar fascia, and you can just take it without any long-term
That's
consequences.
fascinating. Nice stuff.
So ahead of time. I think that's a bad move if you're like, oh.
Here's the thing that I've always been confused on, and I know you probably know the answer already, and you always tell me, and you try to explain it to me as well. But like Bryce Harper last year, Shohei Ohtani right now. Shohei Ohtani already hit a home run in his first BP session. He's going to have 50 preseason at-bats before we get started here in spring training. Bryce Harper looked great last year. Bryce Harper was playing, I thought, his best baseball at the plate. He obviously was limited as far as he could throw. How can you do that? Like, how can you be so messed up where you cannot pitch? Do not pitch, bro. Don't even throw it overhand. But go ahead and have 400 at-bats this year. Like, how is that superhuman stuff? Or what is it about the motions that allow that to be so?
Yeah, I think it's just the biomechanics of throwing versus hitting is just entirely different, and it doesn't. I mean, to some extent. So if you're a righty and you're batting righty, you're definitely putting some valgus stress on the inside of the elbow. My guess is that if these guys are getting back sooner, they're also incorporating some sort of internal brace construct where you're stress shielding the repair.
That's Harper.
You're stress shielding the tendon while it.
And Trevor Story had that done too.
Right. And so they talk about, in a young athlete, you can do a repair rather than a reconstruction with an internal brace. And they're experimenting now, going forward with doing a reconstruction, but also with an internal brace. And so that's a very stout, type of almost nylon weave mesh type of material that will stress shield the ligament while it grows scars in. That's my guess.
We're here at the Bone and Joint Institute. Dr. Jeff Olson is with us. He specializes in elbows and shoulders. We had Steph Barassa on before. She was talking about ACLs wearing out. My big thing is working with younger pitchers and younger athletes and them specializing too early. What percentage would you put on, let's just say, 12-year-old to 18-year-olds, Tommy John, now as opposed to maybe 20 years ago? Is that number continuing to rise?
Yeah, I think that one of the people who is most interested in this and talks about it is Chris Ahmad down at Columbia, and he takes care of the Yankees. He's all about the single sport specialization, and he's definitely shown that the numbers are on the rise for sure. And how do you combat that? One of the things that I think I can't reconcile is, to be an athlete, you want to be able to play everything, right? You look at these people who are, playing basketball, three-letter varsity players, basketball, football, baseball. They're just athletes, and those tend to be the best people out there. So what's it to gain pitching, thousands and thousands of pitchers all year round? I think there's more harm than good, and you lose, maybe a little bit of translational skills from different sports. And so, but for sure, I don't know what percentage is or what the projected 200, 300% of the numbers of, maybe 10, 20 years
but
ago.
You see more of them.
Yeah, for sure.
It bothers me when younger kids get hurt because, I love the Bone and Joint. It's about preventative medicine. I'm trying to prevent these pitchers from getting hurt. I work with so many of them, but coming from you, maybe it'll set these parents straight to be like, hey, listen, let your kid play other sports.
Yeah, and Steph is great, and she's done a lot of good work with, one of the things they just showed, we were talking about it the other day, is less adductor strains, and when you're incorporating kind of preventative type approaches to sports. And one of the things her and I are going to do over the spring is look at how can we prevent these types of throwing injuries, not just Tommy UCL injuries, but also partial articular sided cuff tears, and even just shoulder strains or inflammation, etc. How can you prevent that going forward?
One more thing that's happening, Dr. Olson, is this weighted ball technique that a lot of kids are doing. This dude hates it.
Yeah.
Drive line is the biggest proponent of it. Just, we've always been taught this is not a natural motion for the human body, the overhand throw in baseball. Now, to put an extra 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pounds on top of that throw, it can't be good.
Even medicine balls. I'm watching pitchers now, Doc, throwing it over the top with a 25-pound medicine ball. I can't imagine that crap.
Is it all bad, or is there some good in some of that?
Yeah, I don't think it's. I think that's too much, and it's just like working out. Like your body needs rest. There's such a thing as overdoing it. You need to rest and recover, and when you look at the biomechanics behind throwing, the ligament is experiencing something like 300 or 400% the amount of stress that it's supposed to. But we have dynamic stabilizers in our forearms to kind of offload that ligament. But then you're going in and adding a weighted ball. I mean, it comes down to physics. Kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. So
of course,
your mass goes up, and then now they're throwing harder. Your velocity goes up, and that's a lot of kinetic energy across the elbow, and then it's going to cause injury.
I try to get my kids to throw volleyballs, footballs, because I played all these different sports, even soccer balls. Instead of throwing like a 2-pound weighted ball, like with the force of a baseball, just work on some of these other balls that are just a little bit heavier. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think that there's some merit in training to. It's like weightlifting. It's like, if you're 1 rep max, if you can do more, maybe you can do more in a rep thing. But you have to be careful with it. Like you can't overdo it. You can't be throwing 1,000 more balls at twice the weight. Like it's just too much. And instead, you got to focus on more of a complete approach and strengthening the core, strengthening the legs, where your push off is going to probably contribute more to your velocity than it is just throwing a heavier ball.
talk about some of the rehab stuff that you use. We're big on the dry needling. I've just experienced some dry needling. What's the one, infraris? What's my muscle right here between my latissimus dorsi and my actual deltoid?
So in the back, you have your teres major and your latissimus. The infraspinatus is one.
Infraspinatus.
Yeah.
Infraspinatus tendon's down in your shoulder.
Yeah. So deep down under the trapezius, and I think when people dry needling is great because it gets at what you're doing is when the needle goes in, you're essentially overstimulating a muscle to cause inhibitory signals to shut it down. So
to make a reaction, basically.
Yeah, and the muscle is so tight that it just all of a sudden. I talked to a lot of therapists about this because I didn't know a whole lot about it either, and then I started talking to them, and they're like, "Yeah, it's amazing. You put the needle in, and all of a sudden, boom, it just relaxes." And sometimes they'll use a little microstim needle as well, so they give a little electric pulse, an inhibitory signal too.
That's beautiful. Look at that.
So I've actually been a shout out to Alex, one of our therapists over at Ivy Rehab. I've been meaning to go over and get some dry needling done there.
It's fun.
And I mean a bunch of that stuff. I think you're talking about like these cold exposure therapies, the infrared saunas. I think it's stuff that's not well studied right now, but has some potential. And at the very least, we just don't know what the potential benefits are. And I think looking beyond the typical things, we're always striving to make improvements. And one of the other things, blood flow restriction therapy, they've done that here with post ACL. They've shown less atrophy after your reconstruction, ACL reconstruction in the quad just by doing blood flow restriction therapy, and that's something that I think was born out of Stanford, maybe in the last 10 years, and now is becoming more popular and growing in popularity. So pretty cool stuff, and now we just got to figure out what we can do in the upper extremity to match that type of stuff. The ACL gets all the love.
Talking to Dr. Jeff Olson, orthopedic surgeon here from the Bone Joint Institute. You specialize in shoulders and elbows. You were talking about replacing some and things like that. What are some other methods instead of like replacement? Can you, like you were talking about cadavers and things like that. I know he's got a piece of cadaver in his shoulder from playing football. What are some of the latest things and techniques that you're up on right now here?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things in the last 5-10 years is something called the lower trapezius transfer. That's typically for a patient with a rotator cuff injury that's not repairable anymore. So perhaps it was
That'd probably be me.
Yeah.
Whatever's left in there.
So a chronic tear that when you get an MRI, you look at it and you're like, you know what, the tendon's shortened. It's not going to pull over because the muscle's contracted. It's at a lot of fatty infiltration. And so what are your options? You can try to repair it. There's a high failure rate, probably 40 to 50% chance that it just doesn't work. Or moving on to that, the most aggressive thing is a shoulder replacement, and we have the reverse shoulder replacement that's become it's very popular over the last 20 years since it's come over here from France, and it's basically, when I explain it to patients, is you're not flipping the shoulder backwards, but you're putting the sphere on the socket side and the socket on the sphere side, and the reason it works is, one, it's a semi-constrained device, and so you're now taking a shoulder that was unstable, in quotes, because it doesn't have the rotator cuff muscles pulling it into the socket, and now you're making the sphere more constrained. You're lowering the center of rotation. You're making the deltoid much more powerful, and now people who couldn't lift their arm can elevate their arm now. So that's great for pain relief and motion, but it's a joint replacement, and not everybody wants that, or maybe they're quote-unquote too young for it. And so the lower trapezius transfer has come in, and Bassem El-Hassan, who was at the Mayo Clinic now in Boston, looked at this, tried it, studied it biomechanically, and found that the lower trapezius, which is the trap muscle, has three components. There's upper trapezius, middle, and lower, and they all stabilize the scapula in some way. The good thing about the lower trapezius is it has the same line of pull as the infraspinatus. It's in phase, meaning it acts the same way. It's functioning the same way, and it has a reasonable excursion. Now, the only thing that it lacks is a tendon length, and so what we'll do is we'll harvest the lower trapezius in the back and add a tendon allograft, usually an Achilles because it's long and stout, and then you basically sew it in to the humerus like a rotator cuff repair. And the reason it works is because it reestablishes a force couple to keep the ball in the socket, so now people can elevate their arm. And it helps with in patients who have a lot of external rotation weakness. And so that's something that's come on in the last 10 years that's really been studied and has good results. It's joint sparing. It's good for restoring strength and maybe even preventing. We haven't shown this yet in the literature, but preventing a shoulder replacement down the road. So it's a great operation. I did 2 of them last week. The patients, you have to have the ideal patient that can rehab the muscles accordingly and is going to be compliant with the rehab protocol, because it's about 6 to 8 weeks in a sling, not moving the arm. You got to let that thing heal. But it's great. It's amazing. So that's not necessarily for the athlete per se, but that's something that's come up a lot and is really, I've taken an interest in that as well.
When I injured my infraspinatus,
Yeah.
The PTs that I was working with were telling me, like, because, we work out. I've been constantly working out ever since high school and been doing the big lifts. Been doing, thinking of your shoulders, you're doing overhead press, you're doing dumbbell press. And they taught me that I have not been doing any of the baby lifts that you really need for the smaller muscles in your shoulders. What are some of those, like, preventative little range of motion movements that people can be doing to prevent having a shoulder replacement at a young age?
Yeah, that's a great great point. And the hardest people to convince to go to physical therapy are the people who already work out. And I'm like, look, and I work out, and I'm like, it's not working out. It's not weightlifting. It's strengthening the periscapular muscles, the rhomboids, the cuff muscles, the levator scapulae, a lot of the scapular stabilizing muscles. And if those are not working, and then the front muscles get tight, the pec minor, the pec shoulder pain. Unfortunately, rotator cuff disease is a disease of aging, so it tends to wear out in a lot of people. If you look at the data, 50s, 60s, 70s, the rates are 20, 30, 40%. In your 80s, there's studies that have cited 80% of people have a cuff tear. It doesn't mean everyone has a painful shoulder or can't lift their arm, but it might mean that they have a tear. But to get back at what you were asking, by strengthening those muscles, you're stabilizing the ball and socket. You're making the other muscles more effective, more functional, and better able to use them. And the implication for me that I see is as soon as people have an out of balance, they get pain. And so the therapy for 6 to 8 weeks is strengthening those muscles everyone forgets about. So yeah.
Dr. Olson, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. I know you've been very busy. You're blowing our minds.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We love a lot of the innovative stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
We appreciate it. Dr. Jeff Olson, everybody, Bone and Joint Institute. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Rob, Ben, live from the Bone and Joint Institute on Fox Sports Radio.